So for more than 3 years now, anyone who observes Donald Trump closely, the way he speaks, the way he acts, I think it's reasonable that a lot of us have concerns about his mental state and ability to do the job of being president. But I'm not an expert. I don't really know too much about this. So why don't we defer to the experts on this? Okay. We're joined now on the David Report by Dr. Bandy Lee, Yale School of Medicine's Law and Psychiatric Division psychiatrist. Dr. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Very excited to have you here to lend your expert opinion on what is obviously a sensitive and complex topic. But I want to go back a little bit because I know that this is something that you have been talking about and organizing around for some time. You organized a conference called Duty to Warn after watching Donald Trump sort of out in the field for some time. What was the purpose of this conference that you put together?
First of all, let me say that my views are my own and don't represent those of Yale. When I was first observing the behavior of Donald Trump, especially in relation to his reactions to his followers and the things that he was saying, it concerned me greatly. So I started talking to my colleagues, and what I found was that there was a near medical consensus around his dangerousness and that we were all in agreement. But no one was speaking up, partly for reasons around professional ethics issues that are actually mistaken, but those were on people's minds, and also people were afraid of the repercussions of speaking. So I thought that a conference discussing this issue would help break the ice and bring out people's views and people's concerns.
Have you found that in the time that he's been president, do people in your field feel any more confident in their willingness to talk about his mental state or their concerns, or is there that same sort of concern about a potential strike back in terms of their career or something like that?
I think it's definitely lessened, and the concern has grown because before it was probable dangerousness, and now it is actual realized dangerousness that we now have concrete data for. So people are more concerned and more willing to speak up. But in the meantime, as you may know, the American Psychiatric Association had stepped in. They modified what's called the Goldwater Rule to state that we were not only to refrain from diagnosing a public figure, but not speak about any aspect at all. Of course, that's very alarming, which is why I titled my conference "Duty to Warn," because the duty to warn usually overrides any obligation to confidentiality or consideration of silence, and therefore the duty to warn would apply in the case of danger to society as well, because we have a professional responsibility to society. So that was my reasoning.
So I'm curious how you go about getting to the point where you feel that you have this duty to warn, because as someone without any training in this area, I look at most politicians and I find they lie constantly. They support policies that seem objectively immoral. Like there's a lot of reason to be concerned about most politicians. So what is it about Donald Trump in particular that you felt went beyond the sort of normal weird speech and actions of politicians?
I think that's exactly where it's crucial for mental health professionals to give their opinion, because what we do on a daily basis is to distinguish between what is within the realm of normal versus what is within the realm of pathology. It's very hard to distinguish between the two as a layperson. And in fact, most people will, in fact, interpret what is pathological as within the realm of what they know and understand and encounter on a daily basis. That is a wide variation we have within human normalcy. But when it gets to the level of pathology is when it becomes dangerous, because it can co-opt a lot of your thinking, it can redefine reality, it can confuse you and catch you off guard. So it's particularly dangerous when the person is doing this out of pathology and not as a strategy, for example.
So I'm curious, from what you have seen of Donald Trump, comparing the last 2 years to the next 2 years. So in his first 2 years as president, he enjoyed unified control of government. He wasn't able to accomplish everything he wanted, but he didn't face the sort of roadblocks that he's likely to face now that there is a Democratic Congress that is going to be very hostile to his goals. They're going to investigate him, challenge him at every step. Based on what you've seen of him, what can you predict in terms of the ways that someone who has expressed the sorts of, like in your words, pathologies that you've identified, how he might react to this changing circumstance?
So I think what we have observed in the first 2 years will be mild compared to what we can expect in the next 2 years. Partly because the pressures have increased, his expectations based on the power that he has held and has expanded over time by eliminating moderating forces will cause him to be more dangerous in ways, and there will be an acceleration of danger with the resistance that will be imposed on him. So I find a lot of people feeling more relieved that we have a little more oversight due to House control by the other party. But in fact, psychologically, that creates more dangerous conditions. And unless he is fully contained, and so far he has not been, then until he is actually out of the office of the presidency, the dangers are more likely to increase and accelerate in dangerousness.
So I would guess that were that a path that was pursued and there was an attempt to impeach him or indict him, there was something in government or outside of government that could potentially take him out of office. He seems like the sort of person that might not exactly go quietly, in one way or another. Exactly. Do you believe that that's a justifiable fear?
I think people are sensing how serious this situation is. People sense it and they are correctly assessing it, but they do not have the words to put to it, and they do not have the experience of seeing individuals of this pattern over hundreds of different cases as clinicians ordinarily do. And so I think it's important to recognize that. It's also important to get expert input at this point. And even though it is a political process and we ordinarily don't comment on the actual political aspect of the process, it is highly recommended that it go ahead in an informed way with the information that is necessary. Now, the ordinary medical standard of care in such a situation is to, first of all, contain the person, do an urgent evaluation, and then figure out what the least restrictive means of management will be from then on. So containment actually comes first because it's an emergency and because the dangers are great. Now, we do this for every other individual in society, but we don't have a means of doing so for the president, despite his vastly expanded powers compared to the ordinary citizen.
Well, Dr. Bandy Lee, psychiatrist and author of The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, thank you for joining us on the show today. We really appreciate your speaking out based on your concerns.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for watching this clip from The Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.